All right, good morning, everyone. This is Youngstown's Talk Channel. You got Joe Solo today. Had a pretty firm schedule going into this week with Kellen being out. We were going to have some guests on Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. After yesterday, I took a pretty big spill and tore some ligaments in my ankle. And so I spent the last 24 hours nursing, immobility and, not being able to get around and a little bit of pain that went along with it. So it blasted through my plans for this week. So I'm going to lean on all of you. I've really been disconnected. I haven't scrolled or watched the news or much since the State of the Union address. I watched maybe 10 minutes of it, and then I drifted off to sleep. So if any of you have any topics or want to inform Joe, fill me in on what I really missed over the last 24 hours. Make it good stuff. Like, I don't care about news stuff. I don't care about drama. I don't care about piss-offedness. What I really care about is, feel good stories. How about that? Make Joe feel good today. Because I'm telling you, my brain, so weird. Going into a day, going through some trauma like that yesterday, and your brain just turns to freaking mush. And, start feeling super guilty because, this always happens where I'll procrastinate a little bit about, running or exercising and, just taking it for granted that every day is going to be a day where I can run. And then you get sick or something and you want nothing more than to just be able to run. And you're like, I'm going to take advantage of every day. And I know that's really kind of cliche and, feel more feely from me, I guess. But 330 Sports Show says, "How you feeling, Joe?" I'm mad, like a lot, because easy things are hard. Everything takes between 3 and 4 times longer than it has to. There's some stuff I can't do, like I'm carrying this stupid book bag around with me because when I've got crutches and my foot's in a boot. I can't carry anything. So if I go into a room to get something, like I went to the coffee pot this morning and I made myself a Americano, and now I have to walk with a cup of coffee, and I'm like, shit, like what do I do from this point? So I ended up drinking my coffee right at the coffee pot, and all my routines were broken. My brain is mush. So how I'm feeling is a little perturbed of this. But again, into that Joe Feely moment, you do kind of think of people like that don't have other people around them that could help them, and they live alone, and they just think even the elderly that are completely relying on other people. I effing hate being dependent on anyone else, and I love the fact that people are willing to help, but it irritates me to no end when I need to be helped, and I hate it, and I want to move on from this. And my hope is that I can get through today and tomorrow, get through the weekend, keep doing icing and, taking it easy. And maybe by Monday I'll be able to put some weight on it. But it sucks. It really sucks. But thanks for asking. Thanks for asking through 30 Sports Show. Angelina says, good morning. Share the live. Tap and say hello. Yes, thank you, Angelina. I appreciate it. And it's going to be dependent on you guys. I mean, you can call me 330-595-1600 and carry the show, because obviously I don't have Kellen to bounce off of and my brain's mush. So if the show sucks, it's because of you, not me. Justin also says, accidentally falling is the first step to realizing you're getting old. I totally expect the old guy jokes from this point on. In fact, tomorrow when the MLO Bros are in here, I fully expect to be the butt of every joke. And I could take it. I can. But basically what happened, I gotta think of a better story than this is actually what happened, but I'll think of a better one by tomorrow. Woke up 4:30 in the morning and planted my foot to start walking down the steps. I don't know if something was on the floor or something slipped, but that planted foot just went forward, and that planted foot hit every step on the way down. So I'm kind of sliding like I'm sliding into first base all the way down 12 steps. And the other foot that wasn't planted was just like, it was flailing. It was on the left side of my body at one point, on the right side. And I know it's probably trying to plant too to slow my momentum down so I didn't crash into a wall or something like that. But it ended up being the sacrificial limb. Didn't slow myself down. So I guess if my brain would have been working, if I'd have just like gone with the slide and gone down on my butt and just finished sliding, that would have been better. But the left foot took all the brunt of it and tore ligaments in the ankle. I got this big orange protrusion from the side of my leg. It looks absolutely disgusting and bruised. And then I also broke my big toe, which I've done that a billion times. So it's just, I'm ginger with it, but it's a toe. What the hell are you going to do? But anyway, yesterday I got some x-rays just to make sure it wasn't broken, which I am huge surprised that I didn't break my ankle. The way that it was bending and flailing all around, I was almost certain that I'd busted that sucker. But never been through a tendon all the years of playing sports, and I'd never had a tendon injury. So I don't know what I'm in for. Doctor seems to think like in a week that I'll at least be able to put some weight on that foot, and then the healing will be a couple months in the making. But anyway, that's the update on Gimpy Joe, and while I'm going to do more in front of computer screen work than I am out in the field work this week, but I'll get through it. And fortunately, I get to plant myself in a seat like this and talk to all of you. So let's see. Last time, Angelina says, last time I was on crutches, I had iced coffee from Dunkin' and spilled that shit, and I cried so bad. Yeah, you can't do anything. And I'm like, what the frig? Like, I'm a problem solver, so this thing bothers me. Like, so I almost want to make some kind of apparatus that I can attach things that I want to carry to my chest and then get myself on. These crutches suck, by the way. Having a boot and crutches, I've never had it before, and it sucks ass. It's slow. It's cumbersome. You can't do anything. I mean, the alternative is, before I got the crutches yesterday, I could do nothing. I had to have, call a person in and wait on me and go get this for me and let me use your shoulder to walk somewhere. So, yes, I'm happy that I actually have them, but they absolutely blow. Angelina says, sending prayers and a speedy recovery. Yeah, thank you, Angelina. I appreciate that. After I posted on Facebook, I had about 1 billion messages that came in. And when I was sitting waiting for x-rays and whatnot, reading through all these people who, care about me out there and who texted me and messaged me, that was awesome. I really appreciate all you. And I don't require a whole lot of those kind of words, sympathy, empathy, showing love and acknowledgement. But it's really good to hear when I was at had a down day yesterday. So thank you for that, Angelina. Justin says, you knew spring was coming. Who knew fall was just around the corner? There's going to be 1 million of them. I might even take notes. Of how many old people jokes I get and how many butts of jokes I actually end up being. What? The thing? Oh, dude, I don't know if I can lift it. Every time I freaking twist, I think I'm going to hurt it. Like, there it is. Big old boot. Oh, that fucking hurt. Isaac, why would you do that to me? It was comfortably resting on a box. Anyway, there it is. There's Joe's boot. Jason says, sign of a good talk show host, Joe. You do good changing on the fly, and unlike some of the other talk shows in the area, you can give a fair balance on any topic. Love it. And, I also know the value of having an outlet where you can discuss and have discussed things that, come from, and I'm not going to say unbiased because we all carry those, but an objective standpoint where, I'm a science guy, so challenging theory and status quo is the job of everyone. So, having the possibility that you might have something wrong or being wrong, without your ego getting in the way and getting entrenched in an idea and never coming off of it, no matter how much new information that you get. I mean, we got to give a little bit more grace to people when they do change their minds, so we don't impugn their character and saying, hey, you're a flip-flopper. Because, I mean, John Kerry paid the ultimate sacrifice at one point that he felt differently at an earlier point of his life and all of a sudden felt differently later. Well, that is human freaking nature. I mean, every person levying that criticism has done that if you're a freaking human being. So I think talk radio and giving regular people, not trained professionals, we don't ever claim to be in broadcasting, polished up in the business of this. We just open these microphones to people for opinions and, give our hot takes and try to dissect things. Each one of the hosts down here, they really have their own flair. And when you combine all of us together and get us all in the same room to talk about something, you really get to unravel a lot of these issues that seem to always hit impasse when you hear the media and politicians talk about it, because we're not afraid of changing our mind. So thank you, Jason. That compliment, I love it. Isaac, I already showed it to you, and it hurt me to show you. Laura said, you shouldn't host these lame duck snowflake fat little girls, a.k.a. the MLO bros. They make you look bad. No, they don't. You know what? I was sitting in church one time, and I felt like the pastor's message was just for me. And talking about like our ego getting in the way, and we want every message and we want every messenger to be delivering to us. Sometimes when you run across something in society, that message or that purveyor of message just wasn't for you, but there's somebody out there that benefits. So, the pastor's point was you just got to chalk it up and know that somebody's getting something. Even if it's not you, you got to give up the fact that wasn't crafted for you and not make it so, you-centric. So thank you for that. Isaac said, I'll love you more if you show it to us. I did show it to you. I guess that might be an old. No. I want raw Joe foot on the table. No, I'm not. I feel when I put that shit in this boot, it pushes everything with great pressure and I get no pain. So what you're asking me to do is take off what feels good. And for the simple primitive pleasure of watching the trauma or looking at the trauma that I suffered, you would be willing to let me, experience that pain. And that makes you a bad person. So, Isaac, you're condemned. Angelina says, oh my God, not the foot pics again. No, I will not do the foot pics. I did take a picture of it for posterity just because I could not believe how ugly and how much it wanted to make me gag when I looked at it. Angelina says, it's good to hear real people talk real life shit. You guys don't sugarcoat, and I appreciate that as a viewer. Abso-freaking-lutely. So thank you for being out there, Angelina. Sorry about the foot. Boot on. Yes, Kathleen. Thank you so much for being out there and listening. All right, so back to the State of the Union. I only saw a portion of it, and I only saw some of the response, some of the criticism, some of the highlights, if you will. And so if you could fill me in on what your opinion of how the president did. So from Joe's perspective, and I don't think any of the mechanisms of government function the way that I would expect or the founders would have expected. State of the Union is basically this is the presentation of where we're at, right? And politicians are always going to mark up the language for marketing purposes. They're going to do promotions and rah-rah and whatever. And to get any real value out of what a State of the Union should be, it should be basically a data person, not a presenter, just the data. Where we are and where we're going. Should answer two questions. So if you watch a State of the Union and can't figure out where we are, someone saying, okay, here's where it went really well. Here's where it went a way that we wish it would have been better. And then on the where we're going, hey, we're going to sew this thing up and we're going to need you all to come together and whatever. This presentation to me was just a continuation of the splitting and the division between the two sides. If you're going to critique the other side, which it might have all true statements, it might be warranted, but if you're going to take the moment, squander it where you could maybe try to sow some unity, but this was a months and months of preparation on a speech and deliberate use of language and strategy for doing it. This is not a ramp down for division. This was definitely a ramp up. And I think the position of power, whether it be you're talking about, foreign diplomacy or the economy or tariffs or whatever, all of it seems to be that if what you've seen in year one is going to be a continuation going forward. And if you don't like it, I don't care. Now going into a midterms if the House flips, which the likelihood of it flipping is very good. And if a requirement, the only reason you're doing and getting away with what you are right now is because of that slim majority and it fizzles, then what? Then you're going to come and use your State of the Union and say, hey guys, I know I talked a lot of shit before, but let's try to get some stuff done. I mean, do you really think that the likelihood that Democrats are going to come along and say, oh yeah, we'll let bygones be bygones and join any kind of effort? Or you're like, no, I got some power now. I'm going to do to you what you did to me. And the turnabout is fair play thing continues on, and every person out in regular Personville pays that consequence. So no adults in the room right now. Everybody's just throwing tantrums everywhere you get. This is a game of idiocy rather than intelligence, and that's why I watched 10 minutes and went to sleep, because my sleep is way more important than what I could have predicted, put in an envelope of what could be said. There were some niceties. They honored some people, and they talked about things that should have universal support. But if I wanted to set a path for the next year where there was going to actually be some cooperation with the other side, it would absolutely be, where's all of our common ground topics? What can we universally agree on? And maybe I only get 25% more of what I promised to do, but I get a lot done by making some concessions and offering to have the other side make concessions, and come to the screeching halt that we expect from what government was designed to do. So there's my quick thoughts. Let's go. Let's see. Angelina says, to see so much division in one room is embarrassing. The disrespect on both sides was absolutely disgusting. In my opinion, you're right. Mandy said, AM, how is the foot? The foot is in, I don't know, neutral mode. Joe's not as good, but the foot is better. Angelina said exactly what it was. But you see that all around government. Like it's a we have to have faith in what the branches of governments are supposed to do, and even when we're winning, keep them sewn in so they're not deviating from what we depend on them doing. In this space, it's basically the majority rules and inflicts all of the damage because they can, only to have the new majority to inflict the same damage in the other direction. And so that push and pull is not going to, you're going to have this small, timeline of where you got your way, and in another timeline of you complain that you're not getting your way. So, thinkers should see that that's a possibility and engineer. And Republicans are terrible about having a majority and not going for it, but not pushing things through for the sake of unity. Just they're so disorganized with whatever their method is, and the fights that they pick and the ones that they turn over on doesn't buy any more of that unity. So I just think it's such a dumb exercise. But even in other parts of government, like you have these hearings where you have actual experts that are sitting in front of Congress, and they can ask real questions that will inform themselves and others. And I've been an expert that politicians have called in on and shared my expertise into a piece of legislation that was going through. And they're like, hey, this is coming through. I know about 10% of it. Fill me in, Joe. And behind closed doors, I told them everything I know, right? I didn't advocate one direction or another. I gave them all data so that when they left the room, they were smarter about the topic, and that was my job as an expert. Now, let's just say we did under that same thing under a hearing where both sides could ask me questions. I would have my notes about everything that I could put in their heads so they can make decisions. And what do you think I would experience? It would be one side, right, who was on the other side of the issue, and they would probably come after my character. They would probably insult me. They would probably try to diminish my influence. And on the other side, it would be counter to that. So it would be like, compliments and really stuff that I know that I would sit there and just wait for someone smart to want to know something that I know. And you see these hearings, they're such a squandering of intelligent people that are sitting in front. Now, I don't care if you brought, just like in a courtroom, you bring an expert witness in, and they might have conflicting expertise. One feels X, one feels Y, and they don't agree with one another. And that's where you expect the attorneys to go through their data and counterpoint all the way down. So after a jury's listened to it, your job isn't to disqualify good data for some other reason. Your job is to dig through the data until you find some kind of truth. So if you're the defense attorney and the data starts saying, you know what, my guy probably freaking did it, your job is not to go further and try to prove that evidence doesn't matter, that jury needs to know everything. And the arbiter of what gets through is things that, have gone through the scrutiny of that process. But it doesn't work that way. It's all marketing, and it's not what I consider any kind of justice. John says it's supposed to be combining the minds and togetherness. He does nothing but divide. And I'm not going to say he, because this is universal through politicians, in general. So if you say that about Trump, you can basically say that about all other people. The only real hero in this, I would say, is they're doing some. You got John Fetterman, who's pushing against the status quo, and I think he has a true curiosity. He's still a Democrat, but he's willing to hear things that don't go along with the tribe. You got Tom Massey's causing kind of disturbance. I haven't quite decided if Massey is doing this for a noble cause or if the attention that he gets from it. You got Rand Paul, who's been doing this his entire career. And I have a lot of respect for people that push against it and create more conversations. It's just the voters and the audience of the Coliseum. We got to decide whether or not we want blood and we want to see, the sword come out, or if we're cool with having something smart come out of it. And we have decided right now dumpster fires are fun, and that's why we're so addicted to them. Angelina says, my 2 children act better than all of these men and women in that room, and they're 11 and 4. My son, who is 15, and he could not be more disappointed in what adults are like after having, to pay attention to what's happening in pop culture. We're making our young people disappointed in us, just of how we're behaving, and we're letting it go on, and the addiction is real. Angelina also says, I think anymore too is such a fear now. No one wants to properly and respectfully stand up for things without the fear of being reprimanded in harsh ways. Absolutely. Julie says it's going to be a monumental task for Dems to get the truth of so much BS across the board. And I think the BS, the power structure, how the truth can be contained with those who hold the seats. I think as the voter, my standards and my expectations are very low that we will really know things that other people can control the faucet of. Julie also says Ro Khanna is a hero. He's always looking for the truth. And I think Ro, is that the guy who tag team with Tom Massey looking through the redacted part of the Epstein files, I'm assuming. And he's very political. So I would say 50% of what he says, I'm like, yeah, I can support this. And then he turns pretty quick. And, us objective people, when you have something like the Epstein files, we want everybody involved to pay the consequences that the law allows. And if you're political, if you're captured, then when the Epstein files happen, you have a couple few that you are cheering that pay consequences. And you tolerate other people paying those consequences. The ones you really want because it's politically advantageous for you, those are the ones you really want. So if you go Epstein files and go right to Trump and you deviate and go nowhere else, you're showing your cards. You know that what you really want out of this is not justice like the rest of us. You want very thin lane of justice. And that's a little bit harder to trust. Thoughts on Stephen Smith possibly running as a Democrat? He actually makes good points when it comes to the Democrat Party. Yeah, Steve Smith is he's on fire right now. He's got a lot of attention for where he's moved out of his lane, shared his mind a little bit, and I think he really does connect. So if he's going to do it, this would probably be the primary to throw his hat in the ring and see if he's got a little bit more support than we might think. So I'm for that. And new people, like, don't you have a hunger for just getting some new names as choices? A little bit more of a new ideology that isn't, MAGA and isn't socialism, Marxism, something that's middle of the road is like, hey, and I know everything in the middle is so cliche, it's ineffective. It's almost like you have to be crazy in order to get any kind of attention. But if a politician said, hey, I'm considering just doing a very middle of the road independent run where I'm going to be, stumping for the American people, and I don't care if this effing government burns. If it deserves to burn, that's might as well get it out of the way and rip the Band-Aid off. I could really gravitate towards that. And again, I don't have a team that I'm, really cheering for on this. So if we can just get to the point where we expel a lot of the toxic blood in our government, that would make me happy. That's a really good first step. There was a bill, and this might have been a number of years ago, but I was thinking when I was sitting on the couch, elevated leg, my brain was trying to think of things to occupy itself with, and I was thinking about the House of Representatives and the functions of the Senate. I know, I'm a freaking nerd. But the 435 number of the House of Representatives, I was thinking whether or not that number should grow. If a representative for a set of population where you might have a representative that's representing 2 million and you might have one other representative that's, representing 500,000. And so it's almost like the bigger population densities get more or get more divided and have less representation. So I was kind of weighing the gerrymandering that would sure to occur for that representative. I don't know, the gathering and trying, if you had more, you'd basically be able to create more of a mass to go in one direction that you would control. But maybe it would be a little bit harder to control more people. So I was kind of going back and forth whether or not we needed, more House of Representatives, and who's pitching it, and are they seeing some kind of political advantage in increasing it, rather than strictly who's your representative and how many other people you're competing with for that person to represent you in government. And I'm on the fence, but I'm kind of curious as to you, the listener. Think there should be more representatives. It should be bound by the number of people that person can truly represent in government, or status quo, keep it the same and move on. Julie says he is trying to get to the bottom of the Epstein debacle, Iran AI corruption. Yeah, as long as he can keep it pure, where he's willing to dig through everything, then I support it. And the more stuff comes out of these hidden troves of info that the powerful was able to dig underground or bury underground all this time, then dig it up. Let's just see it. And I really don't care who gets not elected, gets recalled, gets impeached, loses their job, has to resign. I don't care. If you have a blemish, let's give an amnesty to government workers. We're going to dig through, and we're either going to go easy way, hard way. Easy way is that you will give you an off-ramp, get you out of the system that you've corrupted, and maybe give you some kind of incentive where you're not going to go to federal prison. Maybe you'll just go to, instead of a life sentence, maybe you'll get 20 years or something like that to self-deport out of government. And then maybe you get a handful of people that, know that the hammer's coming and they get out while they can get a good deal on it. And maybe then you just take the hammer down and you have non-connected people who don't have friends that they're trying to protect, and let's get the rest of the scoundrels out of government. And that's the default deal. You can't think of scoundrel versus hero, right? And because there are so few heroes, you got to almost put all of them in the scoundrel box until you prove otherwise. And I know that flies in the face of, guilty until proven innocent, but I'm just talking from how we orient ourselves against a class that has worked so hard and diligently to take advantage of us and, take our needs and make them secondary and make it all about them and the politics. So they are scoundrels, and the math says that most of them will not act in the interest of ours. They will act in their own self-interest. It's just probabilities are off the charts. Hell says expanding the House isn't a horrible idea, but I have other ideas for congressional reform, specifically reorganizing how the Senate works. Do you believe that we should go back to the function of the Senate and not making it an extension of individuals, people's representation, and just do what the original version was? The House is there to represent the populace, and the Senate was there to represent the state interests, and that push-pull meant that somebody was looking out for the state, and then somebody was looking out for the people. And through that fight, we had to make sure it wasn't skewed too friendly to the people or too friendly to the state, and make those concessions. That I mean, I think I don't know why we bailed on that and just made an extension or made a bigger people representation. Maybe I have a better explanation. And it also Hell says, but expanding the House can certainly help with the idea that people aren't being properly represented. If you can make it so the new people coming in, if the people that are there feel that is a threat, then you're doing your job. If they are welcoming it, you got to question why they see the incoming crop of new representatives. I mean, let's just say that big urban districts are going to get way more representatives than rural. Well, the Democrats are going to be really for this project because they're going to add so many more Democrat seats because the districting is obviously not a fixed component on how we divvy up. It's all for political control rather than whose needs need to be represented in the halls. So you have to fix gerrymandering first, make it so that it's not bipartisan anymore, make it so that it's formulaic and it's free from human interventions. And that way, once you get gerrymandering fixed, then you put in we'll say add another 100 representatives, and then you put it through that same formula, and the output is that your districts are drawn by, you give it the programming to say, find the most common overlapping interests and put those people in a group. And don't poison it by saying, let's weight this gender group or this ethnic group or this racial group and give that any play. Because I think, the interest of the government, what they can do, and, the DEI woke thing where strictly gave legal an incentive to give an advantage in a direction that I truly feel is unconstitutional, where it should be a blind deal. Like, what does the Congress have, what's the Congress's realm of activity, and have those interests aligned with what they're supposed to be doing. So I guess the step before gerrymandering fix the what government's allowed to dabble in and keep it in its lane. So as you can see, this is not going to be a 5-paragraph argument. This is going to be a lot of smart people that can keep that train loaded and moving forward. And there's a lot of fixes that need to happen even before our solution of adding more representation will be effective in the way that we really want it to be, which is a pure non-political people representation in our government state of mind, or from a standpoint. Let's see. Julie says, do we need gerrymandering at all? No, a formulaic 100%. We just have to decide, what formulas best serve the people and diminishes the government's role in being social engineer. All right, we have a call. All right, caller, you're on.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm the one commenting as help corridor, by the way.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up gerrymandering because I actually had a solution that I was pondering a few weeks ago that I think could be kind of effective, and I'd like to see Ohio kind of pilot the program.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would get rid of districts altogether and have House elections be statewide and have them function similar to how certain school board districts vote, right? Where the top 15 finishers would end up going to Washington.
Interesting. So what about representing the interest? If you've got a minority interest and you have no representation, the popular candidate wins, and then your interest doesn't get represented.
Well, I don't see how that would be a problem with this system, right? So I think we kind of have an issue. This is a nationwide problem, but where we are so focused on locality when it comes to individuals that are going to be opposing federal laws, sitting on committees that deal with federal interests, et cetera. I feel like this system might actually help minorities because you'd have to spread the vote out a lot more. Like, we have a very interesting phenomenon with House races nationwide that I've noticed, where people are afraid to sometimes vote for the candidate they would want in a primary, for example, because, well, they're not polling well, they're not doing terribly great, etc. I feel like this would kind of incentivize voting for the candidate you want rather than the one you think is going to win.
And do you think this, because you wouldn't be party beholden, or you wouldn't, you weren't dealing with voters in a district where you have to appeal to them? Do you think more independents and more other kind of persuasions would have a better shot?
Oh yeah, no, especially in like Cleveland and whatnot. If you live up in that area, the Cuyahoga County area, if you're a kind of a staunch conservative, you don't have much of a voice right now at all.
Right.
And a lot of people probably stay home as a result of it. If you could vote for a candidate that's not within your district because there are no more districts, but rather aligns with your values, 2 to 3% of the vote in Cleveland would actually maybe be enough to put a candidate over the top, especially if it's a top 15 finisher.
Yeah, and I think I think it creates a little bit of a moving target too. That if your strategy is to corral your voters in one space, you have many years to establish that dominance. Where if you've got this, then it's a moving target. You can't overinvest in locking down an area because it's moving.
Oh yeah, not just that, but we could partner this with other sort of reforms, such as, like, I believe removing party marquee from a ballot is a brilliant idea.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
You don't see the R or the D or the L or whatever party they're affiliated with. You just see the name of the candidate.
Absolutely, yeah. You make it blind where you don't know what party they're from, and that'd be amazing.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is that
Yeah.
I briefly commented on mine is just reforming the Congress as a whole, because it's quite obvious that it's busted, right? The Senate has become entirely too much of an extension of the House, for example.
Absolutely.
And it was really more meant for procedural issues, judicial confirmations, et cetera. And now we have it as basically as a way to kind of stop the House from doing what the House needs to do. I'd prefer it function more like the parliamentary systems in the UK, for example, where the upper house is more of a formality.
What do you think about forcing maybe like in administration the vice president be the losing candidate from the other side, and kind of forcing some balance within the executive?
I'm not necessarily sure I like that idea, because the winning candidate is the winning candidate, right? And I've never believed that winners should have to capitulate to lose. That kind of goes against why we vote in the first place.
Right.
I'm not big on bipartisanship. And the last thing I'll say here before I knock off is I think House terms are entirely too short. I think 2 years is way too low for somebody in the House of Representatives, because then they spend the overwhelming majority of their career campaigning and trying to get donations.
Yeah.
I'd like to see their terms go up to 4 years, but you only get 2 of them.
Okay. And I
think that's a better idea.
Do you think there should be term limits?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Across the board, I think the House should get 2, the Senate should get 2. I think the president should only get 1 term that's 5 years.
You think 4 years? Well, I think if you make the process more accommodating to get things done faster, rather than having 2-year stalemates on things, then I think you could shorten those terms, because there'd be enough time to get agenda items done.
Oh yeah, and you would have an issue where, like right now, we elect the president, and they spend, in most cases, the bulk of their first term campaigning for re-election.
Right.
I think if you held them to 5-year terms, they might be more focused on actually getting the job done rather than, oh gosh, I have to secure my re-election.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for calling, brother. I appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you to that caller. If any of you all want to call, 330-595-1600. You're acting as Joe's brain today because I've got a big pile of mush here, so hit me with whatever you got. Joe's been out of the loop for the last 24 hours, so I have no freaking idea. My kid asked me this morning, he said, since you haven't watched anything, do you feel better? Do you feel like less anxious, Do you feel like the world's a little bit better of a place? And being that I watched all science YouTube videos yesterday, physics and whatnot, yeah, I feel pretty damn good about human beings. Although I did see a video about an extinction event, asteroid, hurtling towards Earth and causing mass die-offs for the dinosaurs in a couple million years to recoup and repopulate with life. That was a little bit of a bummer. Because what are the chances that we experience something like that? Hopefully it's just not in my lifetime or my son's lifetime. But anyway, 330-595-1600. What else is going on, or what else has gone on over the last 24 hours that I should be aware of? And this is not just federal, national. This could be local. I think I did see something come across my news feed about Cuba, and there was a swift boat, or speedboat or something like that got some military killed. I don't know the details of it, so you could fill me in on that. Act of war, or whether or not this is an escalatory thing or just a happenstance. But I don't know, man. That part of the world is scaring the crap out of me. Because I think, the cartel action in Mexico, that's definitely a ramp up. That has its, potential to really hurt our neighbor to the south. And, it doesn't sound like they want a lot of U.S. involvement. The tie-ins with what we were willing to do to arm those cartel members, the weapons that we gave them during Fast and Furious. I mean, it's a powder keg, and I don't necessarily trust the fact that it's not going to get a little bit out of control. But I mean, I've heard a couple of interviews from special ops, and if we hit fast and we hit early, we could take out those cartels and really neuter them early. If we hit them or they lash out, and then we don't do anything and allow them to entrench themselves in the government. Like, fortunately, the government of Mexico is fighting back. Like, they're hammering the cartels more than I thought they were. The way I picture it is cartels were allowed to operate in the borders, and the politicians were all on the take, and law enforcement was making more money, turning a blind eye to the drugs and trafficking. Human trafficking that was going on, and everybody was just kind of tolerating it. So for there to be a breakout where the government actually takes a stand and position against the cartels, that's more than I thought was possible. We'll just see if the United States and becoming involved, because I know that if the Mexican government invited us into this fight, and we brought in our special forces and our weaponry and the technology that we have to battle against them. It would not be an easy fight because they are well armed, they are well connected, and they own complete territories, almost like little sovereign islands in Mexico. And they, just like the mob did in New York, they're ingrained so much into the culture that even when people see them, they don't look at it as they're the enemy and I want them rooted out, because they're not decimating those populations. They're using those populations for popularity and support. And so if you don't have the people and all you have is Mexico fighting them, I think the United States is going to be necessary to be involved at least a certain point. So we'll see how that goes. But if I missed anything, please give it to me, because, again, I didn't pay all that close attention. But I do not want to get into a skirmish with Cuba. I want to have our allies that are, thousands of miles away friendly, or at least, have agreements where there's no adversaries on this part of the hemisphere or that part of the hemisphere. So I really wish that that gets quelled really fast before it turns into something bigger. But if you want to call 330-595-1600, Julie says, get big money out of elections. Anytime that you have an industry that is well capitalized like elections, you just don't root it out. Think of how many people are dependent and have a pipeline of that money right into their bank account. and you will get more pushback from the people who are picking up the scraps or have direct pipelines to that cash. You will get fought. And those are powerful, influential people who can pay lots of money to make sure what shouldn't be. So, for instance, I use this example a lot. NGOs and granting was a corrupt bastion. And I felt this in Youngstown. Youngstown has had some economic woes. There's a lot of minority groups that qualify for some kind of grant. So I watched a ton of businesses taking advantage of grant funding that never had to worry about actually creating services, actually selling products, because their bank account was being filled because of who they were instead of what they did. And then, and on top of that, you had different gender, racial, ethnic groups that were brokering their identity to companies, where they were applying for the grant and the qualifying person, fetching a percentage of those grants, and then putting the contract together in the broker's name, and then selling the contract to the company that wanted it in the first place. So you had these brokers, another part of the industry, that just went around. And if you make the analogy between the lobbying efforts, they're working in the same way. There's a pipeline of money. There are people that help other companies and other people get access to that pipeline, and the whole industry wraps itself around and getting on that tit. And then you had even academic institutions, business institutions, then catering to that grant industry and helping tons of people get free access. See, I'm a purist when it comes to this stuff. I want businesses to prove themselves out in the market and authentically win or lose. And I want government to do the exact same thing. I want power to be apportioned in a who deserves it and easy to rip it away and give it. And so long that you have concentrated wealth and power in groups that have immune systems from anyone coming in and, taking out that sweet, sweet deal. Like if you knew half of the sweet deals that this group of people have and compare it to your sweet deals, you would basically feel like you were on trial, and they want to make sure you weren't taking one more dollar than you could. Like all the weight of the government, the threat of the government was to make sure you stayed in line. While the tier right above you, they could just walk around. Nobody's really looking. Nobody's really, questioning. Nobody's really going to jail. It's this whole economy that was right above us, swirling above our heads, keeping us at bay, where we were the ants and they were the grasshoppers. And if they only knew that we could all just get together and say, F this. This is not right. And these people have had it way too comfortable. And this isn't an envy thing. I don't want to, take something from someone just because they have it better than me. I want to take something from someone who has it inauthentically, that is inauthentically protecting a resource that nobody has access. So if I go out to the marketplace and I have a product and somebody hates it, they cannot buy from me. There's no forcing my success or failure. I have to appeal to the most numerous amount of consumers, and I have to do a good job so that they want to do business with me again. They can break up with me at any time, which causes me to try harder and to know, what if I locked you into a 6-year contract, right? You couldn't break up with me for that 6 years or buy me out for $7 million. Well, what I've done was, that sounds good on my end because I don't have the anxiety that you can break up with me tomorrow. I got you locked in. Do you think I try harder or less hard to make you happy? Well, government's this thing where there's a contract that almost insulates to make sure that you can't break up with them exactly when you want to. So if you're a Trump critic and you thought that impeaching the president, well, that's it. That's your ticket. You impeach him. He's no longer president. You can move on. So how encouraged are you that you went through all that process, multiple impeachments, and he's still the freaking president? How is it that you can levy federal crimes against someone and they can be indicted and found guilty and they can still become president? So if you don't think that things can operate, like, okay, let's just say it was you. You're a public citizen, and you were levied a critical thing. Like, losing your license is getting suspended. The rules say my license gets suspended if I do X. Then if you do X, your license gets suspended. Do you think when you go and the judge says, yeah, you did the thing, do you think your license is getting suspended because they want to make an example and they want to make sure the punishment is there? Or what if they were like, oh, I know you did the thing, but we really don't want you to have to lose your privileges, so I'm not going to suspend your license. What does that do to you as a person? That incentivizes you to do the thing that the law was trying to prohibit from happening. So you have this whole government industry. And I know I went real long on something like take money out of politics. It's not as simple as that, because I think the power ingrains these people into the process more so than the money. And because we're divided, our team could be a total cluster. Like, I know that Bill Clinton could run for president and probably get elected with all of the things that he has done, all of the suspicions that he's a bad cat. He could get elected because they've orchestrated. They're smart people. And they have orchestrated a voter base that doesn't really hold their guy accountable. And just like MAGA doesn't hold Trump accountable, they justify it, they explain it, they try to make things that if it were the other guy, they would be highly critical and want an impeachment. If their guy does it, they're kind of like, I'm willing to overlook this thing. And as long as we have these groups that are so entrenched with that kind of thinking, then, the power controls are going to keep them there forever. Now, if the voters were like, we have a hard line in the sand, you break the law or you get punished for something. There are 350 million people in this country. We don't take a couple thousand of them that are part of the political class and make sure that I'm only putting a political class person in there. We have 350 million. We're going to find somebody who's not part of the political class, and we will replace your ass in 2 seconds if you mess up even one iota. And if you did this long enough, then you would, through attrition, parse out all of the bad cats, show the political apparatus that they are one little misstep away from completely being exiled from the process. And they would do their best to, you got your enemy. And just like the racial thing, that if you can say something that makes a voter cross that line, then they'll automatically get rid of your enemy, whatever. So it doesn't matter if the thing is true, as long as you can make people to believe it. Then you got, the Mitt Romneys of the world that all I got to do is tell his base that he did X, Y, Z, and they're out. And politicians can lie about those things, and they don't get punished for lying about their opposition. Okay, back to comments. Sorry, ranted a little bit. Hell says, if anything, American tourists bolster this kind of finance empire. Many cartels have. Cancun, for example, is run almost entirely by Jalisco? I don't know what that is. Like, it's kind of Jalisco, I think. New generation, but nobody cares because cheap booze. Yeah, as long as the benefit of having them around is much like the mafia in New York. They get protection benefits. They get somebody who they at least know. They might be criminals, but at least they're predictable criminals. And you can operate even if you've got criminals over top of you. It was better than the corrupted law enforcement and politicians and whatever. So they tolerated the bad thing. And I don't, I don't feel like utopia is necessary, but I think we're skewed way far. Even to the point where some days I think that you don't come back from this. I think they're too entrenched. There's nothing you can do except for let it collapse on itself, and we rebound. Anytime we get near a collapse, we always rebound. And so I think we're stuck with what we got. But I also suggest that we don't let it get any worse. If we can't make ends to fix it, at least don't keep doing the things that create even a bigger problem in the future. American tourists bolster the cartel influence too. Hell also says overturning Citizens United and implementing term limits is a huge step in towards getting money out. Well, here's the battle I go back and forth with. When the Supreme Court allowed corporations to spend lobbying money and act as an interest like a human being would. So you have your ARP and you have your NAACP. You have these groups that represent actual people. If a corporation needs to lobby for its interest and for its defense against government, the only way you make it so that that's not happening is you have to take the reasons away from those lobbyists. Because right now we're in a deal where corporations just aren't defending against legislation that hurts or helps them. They're using lobbying dollars to get those sweet rides that everybody else is. So it's whatever we're in right now isn't perfect. But I also think that if the government is going to target corporations, then those corporations need to be able to spend money to defend themselves. And so if legislation isn't allowed to help or hurt companies, which again, these are idealistic things that aren't possible, but I'm speaking them in because I know why we're here. I just don't know that what could have been done different to not lead us to this, to this end result. And that's the thing. There's probably not going to be a quick fix or a one thing fits all, but we have to create some principles that we know whether what we're doing either creates a problem in a different direction or truly makes the problem less bad than it was yesterday. And I think we need a lot of end-to-end, make the problems less without just creating catastrophe into different areas. Because we're already distracted by so many things being problematic in so many different directions that the voters out there have no idea with their own brain how they feel and think about these things. Because they just don't have the time to think through and come up with a real opinion. So they end up just adopting and parroting somebody else's plan, and they hope that that person thought through it. And so you have this game of telephone of a bunch of people who opinions sort of like diffuse down to the ground level, and now nobody has any real good thoughts. We just listen to any of those people that go through protests and interview the protesters. They're there for a specific reason, but they can't defend that reason. They're there because they either heard somebody say something and they're accepting it as gospel, and they believe it in their fabric. And so multiply that by 300 million people that have a bunch of their ideas of how things are and are just dead ass wrong, or at least missing a lot of the data that might make them feel differently. You might not think ICE needs to be abolished if you knew a little bit about ICE or what they're doing. I just think it's great that people follow politics, but I don't think the right people invest enough time and understanding to really do it right. If I had 300 million people that spent 2 hours a day hearing something and then putting it through the ringer to see what they believed, we would have a huge informed electorate. But what we did was we thought, okay, we want the result of an informed electorate, so we're going to take the thing at the end of the formula and say 300 million people pay attention to politics, but you missed all of the things that deserve you to be involved in there. You skipped all the responsibilities of paying attention, and you just got to the number. So if I said I want to have more of something in my neighborhood, and that's the end result of more of something. Instead of engineering it so you get all of the more of something, so you have all upside, you just want to get to the numbers so that you could say that you got that more of something. What if all of the more of nothing, more of something, they all suck, right? And so they will never give you the revealed end that you pictured when you had the idea. They're just a sucky version of it. And where it could have worked, if you could have invested the time in curating that, now you have a sucky version that the people who weren't really for it, now they point at it and say, look, that's absolutely sucks. Affordable Care Act's a good example. In theory, needed to happen. It sucks in the way because they needed to win to get across the finish line. And then putting something that was mathematically deficient, completely political, and the dumbest version of what they actually had the political will to do. And it's a disappointment as somebody who wanted to see healthcare getting fixed. They did it in a way that now, try to do another ACA now, right? It'll never get the political will to get a pure version, something that actually mathematically works, something that is good, but maybe doesn't have all the political gold medals that the Obamacare, solution had. Sorry, I'm ranting about this. It's already 10 o'clock. Anything else you want to talk about? I want to get some local stuff. I don't know what's going on here locally. Things seem to be pretty quiet. A couple conversations going back to last Friday that I didn't really get to touch on personally. the fight with bringing the Board of Elections in downtown versus somewhere else, and this fight. I've been around. I've been adjacent to Youngstown politics for my entire life, and so I have watched. You come across every once in a while somebody who's just a purist like I am, where they're not bullshitting. They're just saying it how it is. They're passionate about it. Maybe you don't even line up ideological, but there's a straight shooter that's sitting across from you. And there weren't very many of them. There were a lot of captured politically people, even on the local side, who could not make an objective stance on anything because of who they were beholden to. But that conversation with Beatrice, and I'm so lucky to be in an orbit where he's in the same room as the rest of us, where we can have conversations where we're not afraid about hurting feelings, or we're not afraid about saying the wrong thing. We can disagree and fight it out, just like our founders intended to have it happen. That discourse is acutely necessary for culture. So I'm really glad that we have those. But when I watch things like the Chill Can and Avanti and the Blimp Factory and all of these attempts to do something, I get interested in where it went just wrong. Whose ego is getting in the way of just getting stuff done? Because on the private side of things, right, and Beatrice himself said it, the private side, if you ran stuff like a business, how quickly, like if I were moving the studio tomorrow, how quickly would be reasonable for me to have something picked out as a plan B? And if I ever had to pull that trigger, I was as planned through to it as I possibly could. So if you were one of my customers and I was like, oh, we got to move buildings, right? As a customer, what would you expect me to do as the business owner to make that as hard as possible and as sticky and immovable as possible? Or would you want it to be, would you say, okay, well, he did due diligence, he had a plan B, he put resources towards it, and if that thing ever happened, he did great contingency planning, and he had us down for 4 days, but man, that's the best he could have done, and I would forgive you. But Beatrice at the same time says government's supposed to run as a slow-moving conflict machine. And at the same time, he's complaining about picking up and getting into a building when he's worshiping the slow-moving conflict machine. And then also, it would be really nice if we could pick out a building and get moved in there without having, a year and a half or 5 years worth of conversations and studies about it. So I like the hybrid method. The things that you can treat like a business, do it for efficiency's sake, because taxpayers get a better value when you can make certain decisions quickly, and having a benefit for politicians to look far down the road and know what we're going to do if something goes south. But all these really smart people put these plans together. When something goes south, they just look at the camera and say, who could have saw that happen? And the rest of us who were screaming that might happen, right, think these people are the biggest dolts on the planet. Dennis said if they didn't deliver convoluted problems, we would never need to fix them. Yes, the incentive of curating crises so that you can justify your existence or justify the position that you hold. I mean, you don't want to think that something like cancer, right, is something that we could have solved by now, but the interests that benefit from cancer drugs, cancer screenings, cancer, all the connections in our marketplace, would they really try to make cancer go away if they are ultimately hurt by cancer going away? Is cancer going away a bigger priority than the money you make by being able to say that I'm on the whatever? And I used a more of an emotional example for that, but as long as there is that incentive to continue the crisis, then you get me, who hears something like term limits when I'm a 20-year-old, yeah, let's do term limits. And now a 49-year-old guy that's saying, hey, we're still working on this term limit thing? Is this an unsolvable problem? Yeah, because we gave it to government, and government does not like to solve problems, especially when they need it to run on. Representative Luna, if you didn't watch that interview with Joe Rogan with Rep. Luna, the crisis formulations and the perpetual crisis problems solving lines up, tracks completely with what we're talking about right now. And so if you at least have one representative that sees it, it's just, not only tolerated, but it's a true strategy in our government to keep crises along, because we pay attention, we fund, we overreact, we get pissed off, we solidify our alliances when we're scared. And if you don't think that that's a strategy of politicians, I don't know what to say. Let's see. Hey, Bill Gates yesterday came out about his extramaritals with Russian women. Are others going to jump on board now? Are we supposed to be okay with it if you're giving yourself up now before the names are revealed in the Epstein files? Yeah, and I think that's crisis management. I think that's going to PR, knowing that this thing has a good chance of making it publicly. And do you want to be the first to speak on something? I don't think anybody's going to be speaking on acts that are incriminating, but an extramarital affair is hardly incriminating. It might bring some investigations to you to see if Bill Gates and his extramarital affairs with, what was it, a Russian spy or a Russian person that could have been a spy and somebody else that was connected with, like, was he a loose end that was captured and was giving away secrets? We had that Air Force pilot that got indicted for helping train, I think, Chinese military. So we got a true saboteur thing going on, where we're not protecting the interests of the United States and making sure that we're not having people run to our enemies and help them financially or with information, or sabotaging our own government by participating. We're going to keep a close eye on some of these people, and I don't think we really have. So like I said, I think Bill Gates is dirty, but I also believe that, just because he was involved in the Epstein list, he appeared in the Epstein list, I want to know the people who broke laws and spirit of young girls and put them away. I don't care who they are. I don't care what position they hold. I don't care about the fallout. If you were a predator and you did things that would lead you to prison, those are the people that I don't even really care about the court of opinion, right? If the Justice Department owns any information, even if it's not complete, even if you can't name every one of them, if you own a stick of information that puts somebody in the crosshairs that they need to serve justice, I think that needs to happen. But on the other side, earlier, 3 months ago, Joe would have said that if the Department of Justice was captured by political movements, there isn't a stick of evidence that puts people in prison. It was in burned bags. It was shredded. It was tampered with. Chain of custodies were broken. Like, there isn't anything usable. The people made sure of it. They had decades to make sure that they would never go down for their crimes. And I truly believe that anything that's left over is going to be just fall guys, people that didn't have enough power to root through there and protect themselves, and people like Bill Gates that are going to have these little fringe accusations that, internationally they might lose their job. The prince might not be prince anymore. They might be exiled. You might have a couple of CEOs that go down. But for the most part, the ones we really need to know about, I don't think we're ever going to hear or know about them. Brian Kropp says, if government cared more about service efficiency and effectiveness and not obstruction, re-election, and division, it would solve itself. When government creates the problem, then labels itself as the solution perpetually, the result is what we're currently seeing at all levels of government. It also leads to disengagement, distrust, and good people avoid public service altogether, which leads to a vacuum of bad people, unqualified people, and the wrong people getting into office. Couldn't have said it better. That is exactly true. That is where we find ourselves. And so we spend a lot of time like, what is the solution? And all the solutions we come up with are never going to happen. And I don't want to be a pessimist about that, but it would have to be such a groundswell where everybody could agree what he just said. I think it's a he. Yeah. Brian. Yeah. What Brian just said is that there would have to be so much support that anybody who opposed that feeling would be at a deficit. And universally, like if I came out and said, buy local, right? I know that I could get 2 or 3% of the people to say, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And I might have about 25, 30% of people say that's a good idea, but pretty inconvenient. I'm only going to have a really small fraction of people who say, no, we shouldn't do that, right? So you're dealing with, you have the majority, but organizing in a way where voters come off of the polarized vote for my team prospect and be willing to, if we knew everything about John Fetterman, how many Democrats would have voted for him anyway, knowing that he's going to go off the reservation and help Republicans in some respect. I want to buy into the John Fettermans first, no matter what party he belongs to. And so, like I said, what you fix about it is changing the advantage to following the status quo, break that up. And, it might be as simple as like what Helen and I were talking about earlier. If you take a ballot and you remove all party affiliations and it's just freaking names, just names. Can't tell who's a Republican, who's Democrat, who's independent. They're just freaking names, and they're randomized so the names appear in any order they feel like. How many new Democrats would get elected only because voters couldn't tell? How many new Republicans would be elected because voters couldn't just tell? And so, like, little subtle things like that, where we do things that make it harder to be part of the pack, I think are the things that we need to absolutely do first, because the machine's just going to react and counter us, and then it's going to be ineffective. And then the people who were sort of on board, they lose the wind in their sails, and then now you're right back to status quo. Julia says, how do you feel about Elon being implicated in filling out ballots in Georgia? Pre-filling out ballots is just, well, it's not just as bad. It's one notch above harvesting ballots. So harvesting is basically finding a person that wasn't going to vote, finding out they're a registered voter, going to their doorstep, and helping them fill out their ballots and sign it. That's a harvest, and I think that's really dirty because it's not natural. You basically didn't say, get out to vote, and then if you felt like it or not, you sent a person to intimidate a person into voting, and then you probably, if they're like, I don't know any of these people, I don't know who I'm voting for, and that person has the ability then, with no oversight, no Republican, Democrat in tow, saying, hey, I know who you should vote for, and so that person can basically skew the vote that wouldn't have happened, or might have happened in the other direction, and then you've got to control. You do that on a mass enough scale, and then you have a method of skewing the vote through harvesting. Now, the pre-filling ballots out. Here's the dirty part of what Elon did. What he incentivized being part of, the MAGA crowd and win some money if you sign this pre-filled ballot. Okay? That also, now, that person showing up was probably already MAGA already, but you don't know that they would have voted without the, without the money incentive. So both of them create an outcome that wouldn't have naturally occurred. So that's why I was against the get out to vote campaigns. I don't give a shit if you vote or not. I don't. Yes, I think it's a responsibility of all citizens that you should do. But if no candidate got you fired up to the point that you wanted to go vote, screw them. It's their fault. It's not yours. If you're so uninspired that you're not going to vote, that's the problem of the marketers. Are you going to? Everybody should eat hamburgers, right? And if the halftime show comes up and I start crunching on an apple, well, the marketers didn't do a good enough job to make me leave my house and go get a freaking hamburger. That's on them. That's not on me. I got the thing that I needed done, and sometimes a no vote is the loudest voice. In Youngstown here, our voting percentage, we're not even close to 50% of the area that feels like leaving their house. And politicians think, well, maybe everybody's immobile. No, I just think people are disengaged, disinterested, doesn't appeal to them. They're not going to sacrifice a couple hours in their morning to go and vote in line with whatever. There's no payoff in that, just to get a sticker. So anyway, but I think both are something that should not be a major strategy of our process, and I'd like to see both of them go away. But if the Democrats are going to do it, the Republicans just need to do it in the same scale. And then when it gets so absurd, everybody's going to agree that our elections have nothing to do with the people who vote. Our elections are determined by how many votes you get harvested from people who know nothing about it or had no real reason to even vote. Yeah, that's when our elections are as corrupt as you can be. and I hate them both. So thank you, Julie. 330-595-1600. Tomorrow MLOs are going to be back, and thank God, because I don't think I could carry a show, times two. So thankfully, I'm going to sit in my little corner and be kind of quiet and just maybe say a few words and let them make fun of my boot a little bit. And so that's going to be tomorrow. And then next week, hopefully I get through the weekend and I can put weight on my foot and I'll be walking around again in no time. 330-595-1600. Anything else going to pop culture? Like everything's, kind of boring to me and a blur. Don't know what would be interesting there. Let me say this because, when we are in our silos, perspective is such a valuable tool, but it'll wreck you, man. Like these silos offer, acknowledgement for how you feel and confirming, call them biases, but confirming feelings, make you feel good about how you feel by the justifying it. If you got a group of people around you that even when you're doing wrong things, have the ability to make you feel a lot better than you deserve to feel about them, that just creates a contagion. But when you get a fresh perspective, and I think what the media could do for us is rather than they too creating silos, if you took like what happened at the State of the Union, where you took a person or a conflict or something that happened, and you tell more of the story to people who may have never heard any of the details. Like you take the girl who got stabbed on the light rail, and you tell the whole story about that. There aren't very many reasonable people that don't see that is problematic, right? A guy that has had lots of opportunities to be distanced from society, and judges who felt like they weren't going to incarcerate them for whatever reason, and then a girl who pays that consequence of the experiment the judge was playing. And the conversation of all reasonable people would be like, okay, all right, I see why you took some leniency on a 25-time offender, right? I get it, you did it for that reason, but we can't do that anymore because the real victims are the people who didn't break any laws, that they're just riding around and they get their lives taken by somebody who you could have done something about. That should be the reasonable play on this. And when you get at the State of the Union, Democrats that can't even acknowledge the family that lost a daughter, like that's pretty toxic, brother. And man, that's so wrong. Let's see. How do you feel about? I miss Kellen. I miss Kellen too. I hope she's doing well and she'll bring a fresh perspective. Hey, welcome, Carter. First I've seen you here this morning because all I've done is rant about what's wrapped through my head over the last 2 days. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate Youngstown Studio. And talking a little bit about Youngstown Studio and why I did this in the first place. Those of you who don't know the history, this studio was just a wing for marketing for Youngstown Computer. I used it to make commercials and do little YouTube videos about how to do something, inform the public, educate the public. And it never was a broadcast studio. And when I started seeing the consolidation of companies buying radio networks and television station and homogenizing all of those outlets, I thought, man, I grew up with the most influential voices in our valley. And the next generation is not going to have that. They're going to have just a disorganized train of non-local people that are going to get piped into their ears and not have somebody who lives in your community, defends your community, feels something about your community. And I thought, man, this is a huge disservice. So this only became, the first iteration of Youngstown Studio is when COVID happened. And most of my friends were in entertainment, broadcast, public performance, comedians, musicians, all of that kind of stuff. Well, those dudes, they were not making any money. And I thought, I got this studio, what could I do to help? And so I built a stage that sits behind me. And I thought, I don't even know if this is going to work. I don't know if I could put any, money in their pocket, but let's do some virtual broadcasts and see if the comedian or the musician could put some scratch together. The rest of us are at least getting by. Those people are hosed because they're shut down. And so we started bringing in all kinds of different entertainers and musicians, and didn't go well. I mean, I don't think we made more than $100 on any given show. So it was definitely not what they were used to making out in the marketplace. But now I had audio, I had recording ability, I had broadcast ability because of those shows. And when COVID died down, I was like, okay, well, I got to make use of all of this. So all of this happened in conjunction where I saw radio on the out and now had the ability. And so this was the most logical use of all this technology. And hopefully we could fill a void in discourse. I would like a lot to have some varying hosts, right? People who weren't just. What I've run into is like, I know a lot of liberal friends, right? And I'm a little judgy with how those liberal friends, sort of punch up and punch down. And I want to make sure that the programming is quality without being too judgy, where maybe they're not as good in broadcasting, maybe they're not as polished, maybe it's just like every other talk show. And I want to find somebody who, like Morris Ray was my favorite, right? He was so polished, he was so good at what he did. I would invite him, and he did a show down here for a little while, but he got a little bit of anxiety around just the temperament of politics, and he bowed out. But I'd like to find another Mo Ray, and and the people we found might have some willingness to share opinions, but I just haven't selected one that I really like. But even more business, more health, like maybe not health. BJ won't let me do health, but maybe things in other directions where we're emulating the programming that used to exist that people really liked. I'll even do a Phil Hendry. You want me to do a Phil Hendry, and I'll just do crank calls on people, but make them believable, and I think I'd enjoy that. Do you think local talk shows bow to corporate pressure? Absolutely. They are a wing. They've got complete capture, right? So they already have markets that were established by people who catered to the listening public. Somebody comes along and says, hey, we got this captured deal. Now let's ring them out for all of their values. The corporations come in. They use those audiences, even if they hemorrhage some of them. They use their position to be able to narrate the programming. So do I think that it's always capturing and political programming? No, probably not. Do I think that they will give narrations that appeal most to advertisers and the public? Yeah. So if there's a majority of people who will watch TV and they're all conservatives, then you put conservative programming on TV, and now you've appealed to the most public. Where you have something like Air America, which had really good hosts, really good programming. They tried it, and liberals didn't really want to listen to the radio for Air America. So they were challenging to be a Rush Limbaugh, but the group just didn't like that medium for liberal talk. And so there weren't advertisers that kept funding it as long as they could, but it went away just because it wasn't a popular medium. And the only reason it was tried is because they wanted to have a counter to Rush Limbaugh. And so Democrats and liberals need to invent their own medium where their people do go to get information, and wherever that is, and dominate in that space. And then conservatives might own talk radio, and liberals might own broadcast television. I don't, or cable television. So we'll see where that pans out. But I think I think corporate interests are always bottom line driven. Very few are just captured and will go down for the ship. Like Disney, for instance, it was doing its DEI woke stuff, and ticket sales were down, streaming was down, everything was down. And so they fired their executive, brought their old executive back in, and now they're looking to cater to the audiences again. So might be times when they try to control narrative, but on a business model, when there's public investors, you can't get away with that for forever. So I don't believe that it's complete pressure for the reasons that I think you're suggesting. This show is the exception. Yeah, nobody controls me. In fact, our host with Luke and Isaac, if there was ever, I don't care if it was an advertising pressure, a legal pressure, they would get off on it, where they would push back against those pressure because nobody, not even me, tells them what to do. There will never be somebody who is over top of them. Now, they're reasonable, and so I can make an argument where they'll make some concessions. We're doing some way, so I can give them some finesse on some things, but never have I told them we're not doing that, because they would never do a show here. They would pull completely out and not do it if there were controls above your head. But even when I was in radio, there were rules that govern corruption that I wasn't allowed to say and do certain things. I remember the one time I was doing a Saturday show, and there was a note on the table that said, when you talk about the big game this weekend, do not use the word Super Bowl because it is a trademark, right? And we can't say the word Super Bowl. And I was like, well, I'm not saying Super Bowl as a promotion. I'm not trying to make money because I said the word Super Bowl. I'm referring to something that I'm going to be watching this weekend, which is named Super Bowl. And it's going to be hard for me to say the big game. So I think what I ended up doing is saying, since the radio station doesn't want me to say Super Bowl, I'm going to be watching the big game. So I outlined it, and that was my little middle finger to it. I'm sure I never heard anything about whether or not I stepped over a line, but I don't like being told what to do. Nobody does. Nobody even in this audience likes to be told what to do, especially from people who are not an authority. And if the government threatens you with incarceration or penalties and fines as a way to control you, and you got a couple of guys that come down here that would invite and are begging to have that happen, like that is where tyranny goes in the other direction. They do not want badasses like the MLO bros to stand up to those authorities, because they're not playing. Like, this is not a farce. They are dead serious. And if anybody gunned at them, they would gun back twice as hard. Carter says, I like Verb, but truthfully, his same 5 daily callers get a little bit boring. I would say, okay, so I like Verb too. I think he's a very skilled broadcaster. He has lots of years under his belt. I really look up to him as a mentor in how radio is to be done. And, you got to understand that he's been doing it for 20 plus years, probably even longer than that. And he's on the waning end of his career. And so if you've assembled a lot of helper personalities that keep the audience, keep your numbers high, pay the bills, right? There's no downside to him doing what he's doing. So if he takes a couple of these 5 callers and gives them a lead position, and the callers love it, they love listening to it, they still listen and engage, even though they're annoyed, but it gets to be redundant at some time. Even if you told him, hey, this is getting too redundant, he's going to pull out his numbers and he's going to say, see this? These are my ratings. These are my ad sales. These are every metric that matters. So I appreciate that you have an opinion, but I'm going to keep doing what I do. So I'm going to defer that he knows what he's doing. And I have the same complaint, and I hear in the field that there are other listeners that have that complaint. We still freaking listen. Like, it's not chased anybody away. So if I were to hold the Ron Verb, let's just say I got offered the contract to fill in for Verb, would I just invent something new, or would I just do exactly what Verb did, try to emulate as much as possible? That would be a hard back and forth, because there's a proof of concept. There are people out there that are doing it. I don't feel like I'm better than them or know something that they don't know. So for me to think I know better and to change it up, I would be a little bit reluctant to think I know better. And I probably would jump in that seat and do it the same way that he's doing it, and only start adding new things as a way to test out to see if the audience that he's curated over the last 30 years, 40 years, however long he's been doing it, is open to it. And so the worst thing I could do, come in, start doing my own thing, watch listenership and ad rates fall to 10%, and then say, oh, okay, even though people complained about it, they still freaking listened, and that's all that freaking mattered. So, but do you think, now, Carter, do you think with the way radio is right now that there's ever going to be a chance? Let's just say all the 50 and 60-year-olds that get in the car and turn on AM radio and listen to it all day long, and it's in offices and shops, after they age out and they're no longer the consumer base or the audience base. And now you have the 40-year-olds and younger now who listen to media completely different. They listen to shorts and social media, and they get their feeds from Twitter and maybe the occasional news feed that drops on their phone, they will never get close to a regional celebrity or a local celebrity. They have no reason to. Like, I think I kind of went back through and kind of counted the things that I missed because I just don't watch any commercials. I don't watch any TV. My exposure to local TV is I watch Eric Wilhelm and DePaulo for weather, right? Because they do it better than AccuWeather and Weather.com and anybody that's outside the area. They got a good beat, and they're very talented here in the market. So they're my experts that I go to. And I don't watch the whole newscast normally. I just watch the portions that they put on social media. So I'm one of those 40-year-olds who just, never have the TV on. I never have local programming. There's not an NBC, ABC, CBS affiliate that is ever gracing my TV, except for when you first turn on the TV, I believe one of the networks automatically is on, and then I change it. So I'm probably being counted for a couple thousand views in the last 5 years or so, but I'm not really watching it. And so what other person would you get any exposure to besides the weather people? Right? I mean, you're going to tie into things that come over, and national is always going to take precedence because they're going to feed the algorithms with larger groups, and that's what social media wants you to do, is have engagement. And if they allow local stuff to go through, then that was an element that could have been utilized by a national. And so I think we lose our local identity with just how we access our information, which is, I don't know, kind of saddening. I don't think talk radio can do it. I don't think if talk radio was there right now, you would ever bring a radio station and put it on air with the type of programming that talk radio did at one time. So tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if you would be a watcher, a listener, a supporter, and I'd be curious as to how many people are out there. All right, I'm going to tie this up. I've gone an hour and a half of me ranting and venting. Thanks, everybody out there, for listening. I appreciate it. If you would like and share, if you need something from MLO Bros, they are realtors, and what's the other thing? My brain's mush. They're the other real estate things. They're all of that kind of stuff. Anytime I have a house thing or property investment thing, I would just give it to them, and they would steer me in the right direction. And so call the MLO Bros. Make sure that you call Youngstown Computer for technology needs, run commercial services, networking, all that kind of stuff. And also Youngstown Studio. If you want to have a podcast, we have a ton of people in the hopper that are interested in doing this. They're going to be doing a couple shows a month to see if they have it in them, pay for some studio time. So it's going to you're going to see some weird ones come through our feed because there's going to be people kind of exploring their content, and we're going to share our audience with them. And you consider yourself like a focus group. You're going to listen to this stuff, compare it to what we already have, and give us some feedback as to where you think it should be included, whether some of this stuff is going to be promotional, where they're going to put it out themselves. It's not going to be part of a talk channel. And then some of these might have enough commentary to talk about it on a regular basis. We talked to Paul the other day, and I invited Paul to come and do this again within the next week or next 2 weeks, because I think what he did and what I did could have its own show. He carries enough expertise in mind that we could go back and forth on something completely separate than this one. So Kellen and I will do this one, and then I'll take a break and do my administrative work, and then come back and talk to Paul. And now we got 2 shows that are populating a little bit. But anyway, that's the plans. So again, thanks everybody for listening and watching. We'll catch you tomorrow with the MLO Bros here on Youngstown Studio.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on